Imagine the night like you've never seen it before. We're heading toward the most exciting part of a television program. The lights are on, the cameras are rolling, and the tension is growing with every passing moment. One side's leader, the other preparing to add more to the political critiques and columns he's written about the first for years. But something is about to go wrong here. No one can predict what's going to happen. That evening, the lights were turned on in the studio, and all eyes were on the screens. This was no ordinary debate. There was a palpable tension in the air. This was going to be the moment every American would talk about, a moment that would go down in history. The leading figure in that moment was the newly elected Vice President J.D. Vance. He stepped onto the stage to appear on one of the country's biggest talk shows, having just taken his oath of office. The studio buzzed with excitement. Vance sat calmly, with the quiet confidence of someone who had endured years of military service, providing him with a strong presence. However, in front of him was a well-known journalist with a sharp tongue, Brian Carter. Carter was a journalist who always loved to ask questions, sometimes even provocative ones. Tonight was going to be a little harder for Vance, but Brian's eyes revealed that he had plans to corner Vance. Little did anyone know, those plans were about to backfire. Brian grabbed the microphone, turned to the camera, and began speaking calmly. "Mr. Vice President, you've been very critical of President Trump over the years. Now you stand by him. What is the real reason behind this change?" he asked. His words were a trap, holding many questions behind them. Vance, with a smile, looked directly at Carter and replied calmly, "Brian, that's a very important question. First and foremost, people's opinions can change over time. When I criticized Trump's policies, what I saw was a narrow perspective. But over time, I realized how his policies were actually benefiting the forgotten Americans I wrote about in my book." Carter didn't get the response he was expecting, but he was ready to strike again. At this point, he decided to ask more direct and provocative questions. "Mr. Vice President, I'd like to bring up something I respect very much. Recently, at the National Prayer Breakfast, you said that government decisions are intertwined with divine guidance. Some people might say that's mixing church and state. What do you think about that?" Vance tilted his head slightly, his eyes sparkling. "You know, Brian, what I said was this. Our founders understood the importance of moral guidance in leadership. They weren't afraid of faith, but they were afraid of tyranny. For them, the most terrifying thing was not the mixing of government and religion, but the loss of the people's freedoms." Carter's face tightened slightly. His eyes didn't seem to find what he was looking for. "But don't you think in today's modern society, this could be a dangerous mix?" he insisted. Vance took a step forward and continued with great determination. "Brian, here's what I'm saying. Which leader doesn't hold the holy book when they take their oath? This is not about imposing religion. It's about recognizing faith and rights. To me, the holy book represents much more than what the government can offer. A leader holding the book represents our oldest and most solid values." Carter was desperately trying to find something to latch on to. "But what about seeing President Trump as God's instrument?" he asked. "Isn't that kind of an extreme belief?" Vance, with a spark in his eyes, calmly replied again. "The real extremism would be to say that when people begin to pray, it makes the people worse off. But listen, Brian, what I'm saying is this. It's not your place to tell us what we should truly believe with your narrow perspective. You don't have the right to disregard our values." Carter was struggling more with each passing minute. Vance's stance was growing stronger with every second, and each of his answers became more and more compelling. Carter decided to double down on his efforts to seize an opportunity. "You continued to defend President Trump's policies, but there's a very important question I want to bring up. Vance, what do you think about your relationship with the business world and your support for Trump? Are your criticisms still valid?" Vance paused for a moment and turned his gaze carefully toward Carter. "You know, Brian, what I said about Trump still stands. I stand by my criticisms because I realize the policy mistakes from the past, but now I understand much better how important a leader he is for America. And I should say that Trump's policies have shown that he has actually done right by the American people." Carter responded with a firm answer. "But President Trump claims to help working-class Americans, so why are you still supporting him politically? How do you really explain that?" Vance nodded patiently and answered without breaking his composure. "Brian, I am absolutely clear about what I stand for. Trump took steps to serve the American people, and he has moved in the right direction. My support for Trump is not just about his policies, but about understanding what he has actually done for the American people. And people like you refuse to see that truth." Carter slammed his hand on the desk in astonishment and asked, "Then how do you explain such a big change? How can you stand next to one of the country's greatest leaders?" Vance responded with a smile, his voice remaining calm. "Brian, don't forget this. Change is part of growth. People can change. They can grow. You have to accept that. In my current position, I am trying to understand many more Americans, and this experience ensures that I am always on the right path." Carter, so many questions racing through his mind, was almost choking on his words. Vance's patient and calm demeanor was quickly cornering him. "Mr. Vice President, why are you more cautious on every issue?" he asked. "If you've questioned your past policies, how does that help you gain more trust from the public?" Vance raised his head and answered so clearly that his words resonated. "Brian, this is not a defense. This is an explanation. My policies have changed to serve what is in the best interest of the people. If a person changes their mind, it only strengthens them. That is true leadership. A leader has the courage to do what's right." Brian was pushing even harder now. "So, Mr. Vice President, what do you say about your complete loyalty to Trump now? What does loyalty really mean to you? Is it for the country or just for your personal interests?" Vance's expression didn't change. There was a calm yet determined look in his eyes. "Brian, loyalty and trust come first. For me, doing what's right means standing up for the interests of the people. It's not about personal gain. Loyalty means standing firm for the things you know to be right." Carter paused for a moment. He couldn't respond. Vance's answers were cornering him every time. Vance made one final move, adding, "Instead of asking me about my loyalty, you should be asking this. What is truly right? True leadership is about serving the interests of the people, not one's personal interests." Vance's words were weakening Carter's position. Silence had fallen over the studio. Many people were noticing Vance's calm and reasoned approach. Seeing a true leader stand with such patience and clarity had left a strong impact on the audience. Brian Carter had been bold at the start, but Vance had shown him the power of true leadership and patience. "The source of true power," Vance said, "is not in anger, but in patience and determination." And the entire studio applauded Vance's resolve in his voice. Vance delivered his final words. "The American people, no matter how much we change, our foundations will remain the same: respect, truth, and faith." This video and message served as a lesson for the American people. Patience and values come before everything else. Vance's quiet resistance showed the audience how valuable it is to be strong and to stand by what you believe is right. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, share your thoughts with us in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.